Hello. So today is the breaking in inaugural video with my new camera. So I'm kind of excited for it. I'm going to be talking about part-time staff. I had one gentleman ask me for some tips or just maybe some information on how to be the best part-timer you can be. And in part-timer, I mean removal staff or visitation worker or funeral personnel, someone working at a funeral attendant. So I'm going to go over just some tips and not tricks, but just things that I have found are beneficial and crucial for someone working in those positions. So I know some funeral homes even take all of their kind of tips and things that they want their employees to do and put them in a list and give them to them in that way to make sure that every staff member is performing in the same way and is representing their company in the same way. So, maybe if you are an owner of a funeral home or any type of business, you might want to do the same thing. Kind of, top 10 tips to represent our company the best and give them to your employees to make sure everybody knows your vision for your company. So I'm going to start with the removal staff. Now, this is one thing. Give me some feedback here, guys. Or girls, sorry, if I say guys, I don't mean just men. But give me some feedback on what your removal staff is called. Are you the care team? Are you the removal staff? Are you the retrieval team? I think there's so many different terms. Some of them sound a little crass or a little cold, but I think there's just, it's one part of our industry that I find that there has never been a perfect term coined for that segment of our staffing. So there may be one and I just haven't heard it yet. So give me some feedback. What do you guys call yourselves, or what are you called within your company? So the removal team, I think a huge thing to remember here is it's not just a job. So you're not like FedEx and you're not just going and picking up a package and bringing it back and delivering it to an origin. You are going out on behalf of a business and you are bringing someone's loved one into your care and bringing them back to the funeral home to tuck them in safely until the embalmer can attend to them or the person preparing them for cremation. Your position is one of the most critical and important positions within the funeral home and one of the most important tasks, because you are going to do something at a time that someone has endured heartache and loss, and they are wanting to cling to someone's life and to somebody so greatly at that moment, because it's hard to let them go, spiritually and not the physical, but let their person go, but they have to let their body go with you. So, imagine your spouse of 60 years and you're sending them off with sometimes a complete stranger and entrusting them with you. And that is your position. You're taking this loved one into your care and basically saying, I'm going to guard and protect them with my life, bringing them back to the funeral home and caring for them. It's this huge responsibility and it's a huge thing. And you have to, I think, remember that no matter if you're going to a hospice or a home where there's 20 family members present, or whether you're going to a hospital to get somebody out of the morgue and the only person you're going to run into is the security person working at 1 a.m., it is important that you remember that no matter who's watching, that it is ingrained in you, in your soul, in your heart, and in your hands when you're doing that job. So that to me, I think, is a huge thing. And don't be in a rush when you're doing this. You may go to, get somebody to bring them into your care, and they may say, oh, could you just wait, 20 more minutes? And so you may just have to stand around waiting. It's, this may be the last time so-and-so can see this person because they're going to be cremated and there's not going to be another opportunity for whatever reason. Or, no matter the circumstances, this goodbye moment is critical for them to say goodbye, whether it's 20, 30 minutes of your time or not, you know, you're working and it's your job. So give them that time, give them their space. Do not rush and make it feel like you have something more important to do. Even when you're at the hospital and you're picking somebody up and you're in between funerals, or you are, you know, you have to go from one thing to the next and you are literally in this crazy mad rush of a day, focus and don't act like you're in a rush for that moment. It really reflects beautifully if you are not in that state of mind and in that sense. So working visitation, let's go there for a few minutes. The wall is not going to fall down if you're not leaning on it. That is one of the key tips of advice I learned when I was 16 and I started working visitations at a funeral home, because I think it's all too easy to just lean back against the door frame or against a piece of furniture that might be wherever you are, or to just sit down, especially if there's a desk nearby. You just sit down because you're bored and you've been standing, and it's hard to stand for that long, you know, especially if you have these long durations like these 6 to 8 hour visitations that some places have. I think it's a little more casual of a structure than when you have the 2 hours and you stand right at the door. But that wall's not going to fall down. Don't be leaning. Don't be sitting. Just be up and be ready to be working. You know, you're not on call to be sitting around waiting for somebody to walk in the door. You're up and you're ready when someone walks in the door, so you can greet them. You can show them to the register book. You can show them where the restroom is. You can take their coat. You can answer questions. You can do whatever it is that needs to be done. Be ready for that next step, not look like you're so bored out of your mind that, oh, thank goodness somebody walked in, I can stand up and I can do something now. Be ready and be ahead of the person walking in already by greeting them. People are scared to walk into the funeral home. They're sometimes have never been to a funeral home. They don't know where they're at. They're from out of town. They don't know your facility. They don't know what to do when they walk in. Whereas when we work at a funeral home, it's so everyday for us, we don't remember what it's like to never have done that. So these people walking in need guidance. They need to be greeted. Hello, come on in. Can I take your jacket? Are you here for Mrs. Smith? That's another big thing. They don't know for sure they're in the right place. Set their mind at ease by offering that information up first, saying, are you here for Mrs. Smith? Well, come right on in. Our family's right in this way. The register book is here on the left-hand side. Make sure you sign that. Let me know if you need anything else. Guide them and give them information. Don't make them ask for it. You're there to provide that guidance and be a host as the representative for that family. You know, the family's paid to have you there. Represent them. How would that family want you to represent them? Remember that. And also, don't get caught up in conversations. So it may be really simple if you're in a small town and you know a lot of people coming in, that as people are coming in and out, especially when people are on their way out, they're in a more casual flow. You know, there's a little more anxiety, I think, walking into visitation, whereas when somebody's walking out, they're a little more relaxed and they're more apt to talk. Well, you know, your buddy Bob from bowling, you don't need to catch up on the week's, happenings at visitation. You don't need to be standing around talking to him while someone's waiting to get information about a memorial donation card, or while someone's waiting for toilet paper for the bathroom. It's really easy to be having a conversation and get really caught up in it and be laughing and talking and immersed in it and forget that you're working. So I think you have to remember that, if let's say Bob is a dentist, you're not going to go over to Bob's dental office and walk into the room where he's cleaning someone's teeth and grab his attention for 5-10 minutes and have a conversation with him. You're going to piss off the customer that he's cleaning the teeth off, or the client, and the dental hygienist is going to get upset, and it's just that's not how it works. So that's not how it works in a funeral home either. You need to focus on the family. So now we're going to work in the funeral. same exact thing. Watch your conversation. It's nice to engage in some conversation, but keep it to a minimum, especially the laughter. So as people are away from you and they can't maybe overhear what you're saying, and you're laughing with somebody and they're over heartbroken because someone has died, your laughter is insulting to them. I'm not saying every time, but it can definitely be taken as an insult. So monitor what you're saying, monitor your actions, monitor what you're doing, because someone may be watching you and you need to be under that assumption at all time that someone could, read what you're doing the wrong way and take what you're doing the wrong way if it's not an appropriate action for your position. So just kind of keep that in mind. So a funeral. Now, someone has paid a lot of money for that day to be happening. They have paid the funeral home a lot of money to have a funeral. Whether it's a direct cremation or whether it's a full-fledged funeral, that is a lot of money to someone. And so you working is a reflection of them employing that funeral home. And so you need to put your best foot forward as if they have spent, the Taj Mahal level of money every time, and give them that type of service. It needs to reflect in your actions and your focus and just kind of how you are when you're there. Not a social hour. I kind of talked about that. And act as if you're being watched. Now, the other big thing, and it comes to kind of reflecting that level of service also, is dressing to reflect the high level of sacredness of each of these moments that you're representing. So if you're running a death certificate, it may seem like a more casual position where you're going to just throw on a t-shirt and jeans and run down and go, run the death certificate, get it signed and bring it back to the funeral home. However, you may run into the widow at the doctor's office who's there for her appointment, and she overhears why you're there, and she looks at you, and just like the toilet paper analogy I've talked about, or the cleanliness analogy, when something is represented one way in your business, it's going to make people think if it's represented that way in all. So she's going to wonder, did this guy go pick up my husband from the hospital wearing that jeans and t-shirt? Or are they going to be wearing that when they're at the funeral? Or, you don't want to leave that room for question and for wonder and for things that, people can dream up. Make it reflected well that you're representing always at a top level that funeral home to everybody that you encounter. Now, if you like to dress a little more casually, talk to the funeral home. Maybe they'll get you polos with the logos on them, and you can wear khakis and a nice polo to go run death certificates, or maybe a sweater that's embroidered, or a jacket that has an embroidered name on it, so that way you are still at a professional level, all dressed the same, representing the funeral home in a certain way. And, there's some funeral homes that you always wear a suit, no matter what the cause is, or no matter what the situation is, you always wear a suit, and that's what you do. That's what you always are wearing. I don't know that that's always what is necessarily needs to happen. I'm a little more casual of a funeral director, but I know that, especially you get into some of these old school city funeral homes, and people expect that level of white shirt, black suit kind of thing. So it's a little different. So you need to figure out what works best in your funeral home and make sure everyone is following that dressing to reflect the solemnness of the event. One thing that seems like off the wall, but know what your company's policy is on talking to the media. So when you work out in the funeral home, or out in the parking lot, during a funeral, and if it is a publicized funeral, you are the ones that are going to be approached by the media or by the press if they are tending to that funeral. So you need to know how your funeral home and how the funeral directors want you to respond to any of that. Kind of what is the company motto going to be when it comes to that situation or to the media in general or anything. You know, what are you going to say and what are you supposed to do? Know those practices, know those things. If you're a funeral home owner or manager, make sure your staff knows those things. Don't leave it up to question. Don't leave it to, whoops, we should have talked about it before that situation. Now we know. You know, give that information freely. One tip, and this is just me, and it's me speaking my faith, but pray as a team. Or if you're not a prayer person, then gather and support as a team. So going into hard funerals, if you know it's a really heavy-hearted funeral because it's a child, a teenager, a couple that, you know, whatever that moment may be, a couple that died in a car accident or something, or maybe it's one of your team members' funerals, you know, somebody that worked at the funeral home for a long time and you're having to bury kind of one of your own. Gather together as a team. Take 2 minutes even before the day and just say, we know this is a hard day. Let's just have a moment together. Let's have a prayer together. Let's just have something to unify us together today to get us through this time so we can serve this family the best way we can. So don't be afraid to bring that up. Don't be afraid to do that. You know, if the director or the manager is not doing that, don't be afraid to step up and say, hey, can I pray for us today? Or can I gather us together just for a moment or something? I think it's important, and it does help those days when they are heavy-hearted and so sad. But common sense goes a long way through all of this. Use your sense. What would your family want? What would you want at your funeral? How would you want people to represent your family if you had employed the funeral home? I think that is really the best way to look at it. If you had spent all this money, how would you want the funeral home to represent you? So go into work acting that way and thinking that way, and you're always going to, you know, be successful. So if you have more questions or comments or things, let me know. If you like what you're hearing, subscribe. We have some great videos coming up soon. So thanks guys for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.